Welcome back, everyone. This is one of the dangerous effects. When you go ahead and dehumanize the protesters, when you call protesters rioters, even though for the most part, every protest that happens across this country, 99% really, of those protesters are peaceful protesters. It's always the 1% that it's focused on, whether it's a protest that's happening from the right, whether it's a protest that's happening from the left. This is just typical. We should all know this by now. Anytime there's a burning car, we're going to amplify that view. It's going to become symbolic of the moment. That is the photo, that is the footage that is going to be pushed all over the world. But like I said, the dangerous side of this is that you see all these protesters as combatants. And the effect of seeing all protesters as combatants is that even journalists that are there to do their job and record are also seen as combatants.
Moving in on horseback, firing rubber bullets at protesters, moving them on through the heart of LA.
You just shut the fuck up! You okay?
I'm good.
I said anytime that you see an escalation in protests to riots, or any time that kind of sense of fear in the police, or in this case, troops who are participating in riot control, you're gonna see media getting hit, whether it's just throwing tear gas at them, spraying them with mace, hitting them with pepper balls, or in this case, hitting her with a rubber bullet. You see it all the time, and it's not something that's atypical, but it's something that's always going to catch the headlines because it's obviously wrong, and it's done on purpose. I mean, in this case, you can actually see the officer turn, adjust his point of aim, and fire at the reporter. It was a conscious decision to fire around at that reporter. Like I said, this is a result of the escalation in the rhetoric that reduces all participants of a protest to be combatants. We're entering into a position where rules of engagement are being seen as more warlike instead of what they are, which are control measures being used to make sure that things don't get out of hand. Because we can say that these are professionals. We can say that riot control police, that they're professionals, that Homeland Security and ICE, that they're professionals, that the Federalized National Guard, that they're professionals, but these are all people with their own politics, with their own agendas. And as someone who has been through riot control training, I can tell you right now that you're not just sent out there without a plan. There's always a plan. And yes, you do target certain instigators, or you're supposed to, instead of just throwing tear gas everywhere to disperse crowds. There are moments for that, but it shouldn't be the first step that you take. This journalist was posing no threat at all. In fact, if you have the officer's view, what you see is a woman with her back turned and somebody with a big camera, and this is something that you're going to see all the time. As you adjust to that kind of setting, as you're there long enough, you naturally know, unless fear has taken over you and you're an officer and you're in the black, right? You don't know what's going on. You have a pretty good idea of what's happening around you in that situation. I mean, there may have been chaos in front of them, yes, but chaos is always really sectored off. It's not just one giant battlefield, no. You have groups that hold together for solidarity. This is how protests, this is how riots work. You may have one or two people that are calling the shots, and those people, yes, they're always going to be targeted because if you take them out of the crowd, it's going to calm things down, or it can stop things from escalating. This is just part of the training. But that's not what we're seeing here. What we're seeing here is these officers, these riot control officers, the National Guard, using their tactics to escalate a situation. And you can say, yes, there are cars burning. Yes, there are people throwing rocks. Of course, like I said, you're always going to have those people. You're always going to have participants in a riot that do resort to violence. And as we know at this point, Americans should be well aware, after years of riots, that there are paid agitators and people who go there specifically to incite violence, even if they don't agree at all with what's happening in the protest. I mean, you call them agents of chaos, whether paid or unpaid. These are things that are out there, and we know that there are. So it's just a confirmation bias that you're going to see these people that disagree with you politically, and you're going to see them all as combatants. You don't like them. You want to see them get maced. You want to see them get tear gas. I mean, just look at the comment sections in my videos. The last one was so divisive. You know, and you have people that are like, well, they're waving Mexican flags. They're waving Mexican flags, you know, so they're probably illegals. No, they just have Mexican heritage. You know, the vast majority of people, vast majority of people that are at these protests aren't going to be illegal. Most of them are going to be American citizens. If you're an illegal, you don't want to get wrapped up by ICE. You don't want to get wrapped up by the police. So you're probably not going to go to these protests. These are mostly American citizens, right? Whether born here, naturalized, whatever, they're Americans. They're American citizens. They have the right to protest. Like I said, 99% of these people, as every protest, it's fine. They're just expressing their right. But it is sad to see. It's always sad to see a reporter get shot, especially if it's just some woman doing her job, really. Just some Australian reporter. You know, she didn't seem to be biased. She didn't seem to, you know, be saying anything inflammatory. She wasn't making any angry gestures or anything that would trigger that kind of response from a riot control officer. It's just on purpose. You know it's on purpose. Like I said, unless that officer was psychologically in the black, it was a conscious decision to shoot that reporter. Absolutely, that's what it was. And charges should be made in such situations. Absolutely. Because martial law hasn't been called yet, even though it seems like that's something that we're moving into. And I'll make a video on that next. But I think we're going to see more of this. You're going to see more media shutdowns. You're going to see more reporters getting targeted and pushed aside. I mean, this is the federal government we're talking about. And the federal government essentially has came out and said that, well, you know, what we do is the law. You know, and that's not how it works. It's not just because you do something, just because you are the federal government, you're acting with the federal authority, that you are the law. That's not how this works. That is the worldview of tyrants. That is not the worldview of Americans. The First Amendment is sacred in America. And if you use the actions of 1% to justify cracking down on the rights of 99% of Americans, then you are in the wrong. Morally, you're in the wrong. And I'm sure legally you're in the wrong, because there has to be something. It has to be illegal to just punish everybody for the actions of one person. It's something I had a problem with. It's something that people just generally have a problem with. When someone else is a bad actor that you're punished for them, it just feels wrong. And it feels wrong because it is wrong. But like I said, I think we're going to see more of this as these events unfold in LA. I think, like I said, a media shutdown. And what we're seeing right now is just a very curated narrative of what's happening on the ground over there, for the benefit of pushing the agenda of this administration. And that's something that you're always going to see in situations like this, yes. But like I said, it's going to be used to further this agenda. And like I said, in the next video, I'm really going to go deeper on that. So that's all I got in this situation. You know, we really hope that this journalist isn't hurt too bad. As someone who's pretty intimate with rubber bullets and the damage that they can cause, getting a leg shot, especially if you're a woman, you bruise a lot easier. That's rough. It's painful. And hopefully there's some accountability, even though we know there absolutely won't be. But it is what it is. But as always, hey, if you're still here at this point, like and subscribe. Think about becoming a member. Any thoughts, comments? Do you think it's justified, the actions of the police officers to take a shot at this reporter? Or do you think it's wrong? You know, put it in the comment sections. Let's talk about it. Like I said, this is a very divisive moment right now, but I think it really talks to the conflict between two national narratives right now. And two narratives. This is culture war. This is what it is. This is the real world manifestation of a decade-long cold culture war. That's what this is. The culture war is heating up and is actually leaking into the real world consequences at this point. But like I said, another video. As always, thanks for stopping by. I hope you have a good one.